Suzette, and she is a life and relationship coach. And guys, guess what her mantra is? I am enough, of course. Why else would I have her as my first guest on the I Am Enough podcast? So I am so excited for you to be here, Suzette.
I am equally excited.
Yes.
When I got my tea yesterday, it was on and popping.
And as you can see, hers is a little brighter than mine because she just got hers. And, I had mine for a while, so for about 3 years. So,
well, I already thinking about, it's like, do they have that like dark? What is it? They have the tie dark and the downy dark to keep your jeans. I'm like, I'm gonna get me some of that.
Yes,
so that it can say nice. Hello.
Yes. I need to put you on my website to say how to take care of the shirt.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Before we get into the full interview, I like to do the feature, the what does I am enough mean to me feature. So I'm going to get into that now. I have it right here. So I'm going to select someone and let's see who comes up for this episode.
Fabulous.
So this episode is a new _basketballer 268, and his name is Royale. That's my friend from junior high school and high school. So Royale says, I am enough means I'm not defined by anyone's expectations of me. I absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing that, Royale.
Love it.
So yeah, it's beautiful, and that's what it's all about. Like, you define who you are, right?
That's completely it. It's writing your own definition, because I think we have been so socialized and fed so many other people's ideals.
Yeah.
And especially us being the movers and shakers and trendsetters and all of that we are. When you really sit back, especially when you hit burnout or you get to that point where you get to the top of the mountain and say, oh, that's all this is,
right.
You realize that you've been chasing what somebody else told you would fulfill you.
Yes.
And so I think he was right on.
Yeah.
It's writing your own definition. And that's exactly what I'm all about, is helping people to redefine what makes them enough on their own terms. Taking the time to dig down deep and figure that out for themselves, instead of living out what somebody else told you. And now you found out it just wasn't enough.
Right. Exactly. And I love that. I feel like that's the perfect segue into who you are, what you do, and why you decided to become a life and relationship coach.
Yeah, of course, I kind of said it a little bit, but I help people redefine what makes them enough on their terms.
Yeah.
And I help them to dig down deep, because we have so many layers of what other people have told us and other people's expectations, and even all the kudos we got for being what other people wanted us to be.
Yes.
Right? And we have to get through all of that to find the soft underbelly of who we really are. And sadly, it usually takes some type of trauma or disappointment or a relationship breakup to help us to be awake, to shake us awake. And we start asking those questions that we normally would not be asking when everything is going great.
Right.
And so I help people get down deep, because if you've never accessed that part of yourself, oftentimes you need somebody to help you. It's something that Yala Van Zant said, and I'm probably going to mess it completely up. So nobody throw tomatoes at your screen.
It's all right.
But she was talking to somebody, and they were explaining to her their relationship problem. And she asked them a very pointed question, and they paused for a minute. She said, hold on. I'm not going to let you wander the corridors of your mind without supervision. Right?
I love that.
And so I realized that I help people navigate their internals with supervision.
Yeah.
So that they can dig down deep and go the right way. down to where the truth really is. And Alanis Morissette said it. She said, you have to dig down deep to where there is no lie. And so I take people down there to where there is no lie. As far as what caused me to be a life and relationship coach, I didn't really pick it, Keisha. I think it picked me.
I love that. It's
I,
true.
I think it picked me as early as I can remember. I remember age 7 when I first realized that I could play the piano by ear.
Mm-hmm.
I could do it. I could hear a song and with one finger pick it out on the piano, and it turned into a full scale learning how to really play. And at that time, I thought as a little girl, well, if I can do this, other people can do it too. I didn't think I was special. I
Mm.
didn't think I was gifted. I didn't think it was something extraordinary. I was like, oh, this came so naturally. Surely everybody can do it. And I got to let them know they can do it. So of course I recruited my younger sister and I wish I could say I encouraged her, but I think I kind of bullied her into it.
Right, right. The older siblings always bully the younger siblings into doing things
Yes,
for our own entertainment.
we do it. We do it. Fortunately, she's not mad at me because she can play rings around me and is a
Wow.
composer and all these things that are I don't have. But I sat her beside me on the piano and I showed her what I was doing, and I was like, look, you can do it too. And she was kind of like yawn, yawn, yawn. But I kept her at it. And like I said, she is super great. And I didn't know those were the origins of coaching,
Mm,
helping people access what they don't know they already have,
mm.
you know,
Yes,
and helping them to be accountable and supporting them in it.
yes.
And also, like in my case, in having gone through a lot of things myself, I know how to navigate people out of different situations because I've gone through them myself. So I think I was recruited at 7, but I've lived my way through the understanding of what makes me the coach that I am. I've got lots of scars and lots of
Mm,
certifications and degrees
yes.
in hard knocks and what to do and where not to go. But if you find yourself there, how to come out better,
Yes.
come out more yourself, more in alignment with who you truly are,
Yeah.
instead of coming out bitter.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how all this happened. And as I continue to live it out, which really is a daily practice, it's
Mm-hmm.
not like you become a life and relationship coach, hang up your shingle, and you're done.
Right.
But every day I wake up, there is some aspect of it that I'm accessing because
Mhm.
of what life is requiring of me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And every day, life does bring something different. No one day
Yeah.
is the exact same. So I definitely feel you on that. Do you
Mhm.
only coach women or do you coach men as well?
Solely women.
Okay.
Having had the female experience, I think that is my first language.
Right, right.
Uh, but because in my relationship journey, I've had to learn a lot about men.
Mhm.
First of all, for my own soul salvation, if you will, and now later to help other people, that I have definitely been um, pleased that I've not had any men tell me that I was wrong.
Mm,
When I say things and say, this is what I've learned about you all, this is what I've studied, this is what I've sat at your feet and allowed you to teach me, am I getting it right? I find that a lot of men follow me in stealth mode and get their coaching on the down low, because a lot of times men don't necessarily want everybody to know, hey, I'm getting coached by this
right,
person
right.
for
Exactly.
relationships. But I realize they'll send me direct messages or let me know that I'm doing it right, or tell people y'all need to listen to her.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
You
know,
know,
she's got it.
You know
So
what I love that you said? You said that you allow them to teach you and then you ask questions. So I feel like that's a big part of learning because sometimes when we hear things, we think we understand it, but we really don't. And that also goes into relationships too, right? Where
oh my
it's like
God,
someone
yes.
says something to you and you think you understand it, but then later on down the line, you guys are having an argument about something because you thought you understood something, but if you really just ask the question, and sometimes you don't even know to ask the question, right?
You
So,
don't know. And that's the thing. We're a lot, until you know what you don't know,
mhm,
you just don't know.
yeah.
And I've seen so many people in relationships walking around bumping into each other, bumping into each other, bumping into each other because they're trying their best to communicate
Mhm.
with somebody that may say the same words but don't speak the same language.
Language. That's right. That's right.
And so I have learned when it comes to men, you have to know their internal framework, and I call it the 5 C's,
Mhm.
which is their communication, their code, their context, their culture,
Mm,
and their conduct, because
mm,
all that goes into how they speak. And if you don't understand, or at least have a good, hearty familiarity with it,
mhm.
you're going to be requiring things out of them that they just cannot give you,
Right.
and then damning them for it.
Right. Right.
Or you'll miss the signs, because men just don't communicate like women. They just
Right.
don't. And a lot of times women say, well, he should have said, or he should have known, or he should have. And they don't read minds.
Mhm.
They don't read body language well, because they can only do it within the framework of who they are.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times women will say to me, well, why is it that I have to figure it out? Why is it that I have to? I said, because you're the one that wants the answers.
Yep. You're the one that wants it.
You're,
So,
you're, you're the one that's getting hurt. You're the one that's complaining. You're the one that's suffering. So, yeah, you have to do it for your own self protection, whether you ever get the ring or you don't.
mhm.
It's
Mhm.
for you. It's so that you will be okay. It's so that you'll know it wasn't your fault. You'll know that you're enough, and you'll know why, so
Yeah.
that you'll stop letting what you think he wants talk you out of it.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
communication, and like you said, like asking those questions and requiring or telling your partner what you want. And I
Mhm.
learned that, I feel like, in my 20s, like my early 20s, maybe mid 20s, because I did used to think, well, you should know this, isn't this common sense? Like, I want this out of the relationship. And it wasn't until I said, you know what, he can't read your mind. You have to tell him
Yeah.
exactly what you want. And then if he doesn't give it to you, then that's a different conversation. But
Exactly.
you can't expect people, and vice versa. I know a lot of men that don't communicate what they want or what they need. And then they get into these arguments, or they get into these spaces where it's like, I wanted my wife to do this and she didn't do this.
Mhm.
So now I'm upset. It's like, but you never told your wife that this is what you wanted, you know? So,
Yeah, and the funny thing about it, in his mind, he has,
right.
because in the language that he speaks, that all men understand,
Hmm.
I was very clear, right? And it's right. And the same thing with us women. It's like, well, in my space and with my girls, we all got it. But the problem is, he's not speaking to one of his boys, and you're not speaking to one of your girls. And
Hmm.
so, one of the things that I figured out in my becoming a coach is that I had to be the bridge.
Yes, I
I
love
had to I had to speak both languages,
that.
you know, because and it's true. If I was to go to a foreign country, I would need an interpreter.
Yes.
I would need
Yes.
somebody who could speak English, but also speak that language and understands the context of both, so
Hmm.
that you can help that other person communicate their needs. And so as a coach, I'm finding that's the gift that I bring to relationships is I've done enough work on myself to understand my framework as a woman and as a person, and did that deep digging to find that. And at the same time, didn't stop there, because I learned that even if you do the work on yourself, if you still don't understand how that other person communicates and relates, you're going to still keep having problems.
Yes.
And so I had to figure out who men were to save my own life, because I had already had 2 divorces.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. I could put this on my ex-husband all day long, but I'm picking him. And you and I were talking about it. Sometimes you have a broken picker because you just don't know what you just don't know.
Right.
And so I had to humble myself because, we smart and evolved women, we think we know.
We think we got it all. We
We
have all the
know. We done figured this thing out. We done made it make sense to us. And we are back into the arena with him. And he says one thing, and then we go back and now we're confused. Well, was
right.
I right or was he right or what? And so I had to get clear, not just about my experience with the man that hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
but to find out how men show up, good men that are really interested, men that have the capacity
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be to you who you need him to be. Because a lot of us in our vetting of partners, we don't test for capacity before we start saying, "Oh, that's my boo," or before we start wanting or demanding a ring or a
Mhm.
label. We haven't even figured out if he has the capacity that once we get the label and once we get the ring, is he somebody who can really be with us in the long haul?
Right.
Does he have the expansiveness? And doesn't mean that he has to have it all, that he can communicate and articulate, you know, up here.
Mm-hmm.
But at least, is he a willing spirit? Is he growing? Does he have the capacity to evolve into a person that might not say it like you, but he can see you, he can
Right.
get you. He
Right.
wants to, he wants to evolve. He wants to be his best self. He
Mm-hmm.
wants to be the best partner he can be. Then you can work with that.
Yes. Yes.
Then
And
you can work with that.
I also like to think about those core values as well, because that's also where people bump heads. So
Yeah.
it's like, do you have the same top values? Whether it's you're putting God first, family, friendships, finances, whatever it is, like, do you share those values? Because if you're putting God first and he's putting finances first, that might be an issue. So you
Mm-hmm.
communicate those things before you say, yes, we're going to get married, or yes, we're going to get engaged, or even be in a relationship, right? You have to have those values.
You have to have those values, and those values have to have matured
Yes.
in alignment with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can take two people who have the same value and belief that God is ultimate.
Yeah.
They can go to the same church, they can listen to the same teaching. Heck, you can be in the same family with somebody and still leave with two different understandings.
Right.
And
Right.
you know that if your family of origin that you grew up with, that had the same mama and daddy, and you and your sister still might not understand or have the same view
Mm-hmm.
of that upbringing or that value, then you know that a person that's a completely different gender, that has had a completely different life experience, is going to have a different vantage point. And so that's why it's so very important that even when you talk about things, to listen to each other to get the depth of understanding
Mm-hmm.
and what direction that growth seems to be going in. I'll take a case in point. Some people say, you can tell how a man is going to treat you by the way he treats his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you could have two different men who love their mothers very much, but one might have not been weaned from his mother,
Right.
and his mother's calling all the shots in your relationship. See what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
But
That's
then you have another who loves his mother dearly, but has matured and said, "Mom, as much as I love you, this is the woman I want to spend my life with. So
yes.
you're going to have to respect her."
Right.
Both men love their mothers,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to see if your values are matched in the direction they're growing in.
Right.
Can he, though he loves his mother, does he have the capacity to love you? And do you both agree on what that love looks like?
Yes. Yes. I love
So,
that. So
yeah,
I want to kind of switch gears a little bit
sure.
before we get into the picking phase, right? We're ready
Mhm.
to pick someone or have someone pick us. I know that there's feminine women here, like, look, I don't pick no man, a man picks me, and I'm one of those women, so I get it. But before we get there, how do we ensure that we're good with ourselves? How do we get to that point of, okay, I'm ready to be in a relationship? Like, what do we need to do to be ready? What do we need to do to be confident within ourselves, to feel like we're enough?
Yeah, I pondered that question in, and I thought about it. Is there is, I think, maybe two steps to it. One is what I alluded to earlier, where you have to dig down deep enough to where there is no lie.
Mm-hmm.
And with a lot of my clients, I take them through an exercise that I call, well, it's not even, it didn't originate with me. I wish I could claim it, but it didn't originate with me, but it's called the 5 whys.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, 5 is an arbitrary number. You just keep asking why until you get down to that deeper thing.
Like shadow work.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you state what your problem is and ask yourself, or your coach says, well, why is that a problem?
Mm-hmm.
They give an answer and you just kind of keep bird dogging their answer. So why is that?
Yep.
So why is that? And you keep asking why, with the effort being not for them to give you external reasons. And that's why sometimes a coach is necessary, because if we're used to blaming other people as the reason for why we are where we are, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to focus inward.
Right.
And so I guide my clients by asking them why. I said, yeah, but we're not talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you
Yes.
allow that? Why?
Yep.
And you keep asking why and let them find their own way down to that struggle
Mm-hmm.
in their self-esteem or in their self-definition,
Yes. I love
right?
that.
So
I have
that's
to do that.
that's the first thing. And I think therapy is really, really good, especially if you are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
If you're stuck in some type of trauma, then therapy will help you to understand why,
Yes.
right? But there's a two-parter, right? Because then you're talking about confidence. And confidence isn't something that you can dream up, rationalize, or find out why, and all of a sudden it's restored.
Right.
Confidence comes when you realize that you can be trusted,
Mm,
right? When you're not going to fall for the okie doke, when you know you're not going to take yourself into situations that are going to cause you emotional, spiritual, psychological harm.
right. Right.
When you know that what mama and them said about relationships and other people's definitions are not going to undercut your voice, your value, and your vision,
Yeah.
right? So that's where coaching helps, because coaching holds you accountable to practice
Mm-hmm.
what you've learned in a way that sometimes therapy does not,
Right.
right? Because that person, the coach holds you accountable and they support you and they start saying, well, wait, there's a disparity here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or they start giving you exercises and stuff like, okay, between now and the next time we get together, I want you right now. I don't even want you to go to step number 5. Let's just practice you being around men and just smiling.
I love that. Yeah.
Because
Just.
how many times do we carry on our faces
Mm-hmm.
that we are inaccessible,
Right.
right? So there are certain blind spots that we have that a coach who's walking alongside of you will see and say, wait, or wait, you're going down the wrong road. And I'm gonna tell, this is why. And not basically my advice, but because this is what you said you don't want.
Right.
And it's something that Dr. Phil said to one of his guests one time that, oh man, I love it. He was talking to this woman who was complaining about her husband. and what he was doing and all that. And she was saying, but I'm doing this and I'm taking care of the kids and I'm making sure he doesn't have to do this and I'm doing all the heavy lifting and I'm doing this and even when he says something I don't like, I just try to keep it to myself and I don't want to make no waves and I don't want to cause no problems and I'm doing all this. And Dr. Phil said to her, so why are you working so hard for what you don't want?
Mm.
And so many of us are stuck in working so hard for what we don't want and
Right.
complaining about it
Right.
because
Right.
we don't know that we're going down that same road. We don't even know there's another way.
Yeah.
And a coach
Or
can help you to see there's another way.
yes. Or we don't know that we're good enough to have what we want.
Exactly. And so that's why that part about not just knowing I am enough based on all these external kudos I've gotten,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing I'm enough because I've figured out why.
Right. Right.
I'm going from my internal framework and I figured out why. And when you figured out why, you can't be talked out of it.
That's right. That's right. I absolutely love that. And you hit the nail on the head, figuring out why you're enough. And I had to do I call it shadow work. Well, that's not
Mhm.
my term, you know. I got that from like the spiritual community, but that shadow work where it's like, okay, I don't like this about myself, or why is this happening? Why do I do this? And you keep asking that why. And I had to do that, and as you all know, um, after my broken engagement, I was in a very dark place. And I had to do these things to pour into myself, to uplift myself. So I had to ask those whys. I had to get therapy, I had to have a support system. And I had to understand why I'm enough, why I love myself, and what am I dope at? I had to relearn myself because I was in this relationship on and off for 12 years. So I wasn't the same woman that I was when I was 18. I was now 30. So it's like
Yeah.
definitely so many different milestones, right? So I
Mhm.
do encourage women, men too, to find yourself again after your relationship. You're not the same person that you were before that relationship. So learn yourself.
Oh, so very true. And it does take stamina, Keisha. It takes stamina because if you don't do the work to figure that out, relationships will unravel it. A
Mhm.
little piece of thread at a time. And I think because I don't think women lose themselves all at once, or men for that matter. I think it's a subtle unraveling.
Mm.
It's almost like when you throw like our beautiful t-shirts. If you throw them in the washer, and the rigors of it being washed can cause certain threads
Mhm.
to start unraveling, and you lift it up at the bottom and say, oh God, this thread is hanging from underneath, and you gotta cut it. But the
Right.
more that you wash it, it keeps unraveling. I think that's what happens when you don't have a practice of staying in contact with yourself.
Yes.
And for so many people, because I was born in church and I thought just praying was enough to keep
Mhm.
me in touch with myself, but it wasn't.
It's not.
It wasn't. And so I had to start employing some other techniques and methods to help me stay awake to me,
Mhm.
because that socialization to put a man first is deep,
Yes.
especially in women.
Yes.
It's deep in us. And so we almost feel guilty.
And Black women.
Yes,
Black women.
yes.
And it reminds me of a conversation that I had with my best friend. And we speak about how oftentimes Black women, we stay in relationships even though we know that it's not going anywhere, or we know that we're not happy in the relationship is not fulfilling, but we stay in there because we don't feel like there's anything better, or we may feel that, well, I can't get better, so I'm just going to stick with what I have. Whereas women in other cultures, we notice that the minute the man does something, I'm not saying all the time, but
Mhm.
we see that like when we were in our 20s or like in our teenage years, it was, and she was telling me this because I went to an HBCU, so I didn't grow up with, and I didn't grow up with a lot of people from other cultures, but she was saying that her friends in other cultures, the minute they didn't want nothing to do with the man anymore, he wasn't fulfilling, it's like gone, and then they have another one a month or two later, you know? So, and not saying that that's the best thing, um, as far as emotionally. However, they are getting out of relationships that don't serve them. And I feel like too
Mhm.
often in the Black community, we stay a lot of the
Mhm.
time. And I can attest to that because that's something that I did. It was a relationship
Mhm.
that wasn't fulfilling to me, but I stayed because I was like, well, I'm already older. So, and my job's in my 20s. I'm already older and I'm one step closer to marriage. You know, that was the goal. Like, yeah, I'm one step closer to marriage. So let me just stay because I don't want to start over because then I'm going to
Yep.
be further away from marriage. So what do you say to
Yeah.
those Black women that are in those relationships and they're like, no, well, I'm one step closer to getting that ring, you know, like, or I don't want to start over.
Yeah, and I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. And I think that's the danger of staying in a relationship that has expired.
Hmm.
Because the longer you stay in it, you give so much of yourself away
Yes.
that you feel like you got to get something out of it
Yep.
for your own sense of peace, for your own self-esteem.
Hmm.
And I think that's the reason why self-esteem gets damaged, because you have to think of all the ways you compromised yourself to stay in this relationship.
Right.
And it makes you lose credibility with your own self. You feel like you owe yourself
Mhm.
something, right? And so that inner critic will beat you over the head.
Yes. For
And
sure.
so I think that's really, if most women were to be honest, I don't think they stay or have stayed as long as they did because they were in love.
Right. Yeah.
I think they stayed as long as they stayed because they feel like they gave so much to it that they require some kind of return on their investment.
Absolutely. And after my
Yeah.
last relationship, I said, you know, moving forward is going to be quality over quantity. And I don't mean the
Yes.
person, I mean the relationship.
Yes.
So a lot of the
Yes.
time I put that quantity on it, like, oh, well, we've been together for this long. And, but it's not about that. It's about the quality because
Mhm.
I've met, you know, men after that where the relationship was just so fulfilling. And it's just like, wow, like I didn't know that I could get this in such a short period of time, you know?
Mhm.
So, and like I said, it's not the person, it really is the relationship, the connection between the two people.
It really is. And I think, to your point, in your 20s, I think a lot of women underestimate the power of their biological clock, and seeing their friends getting married and seeing different things happening. And so we have a tendency to have a goal in our minds, and we're sizing up every man
Yeah.
as to whether he can help us reach that goal, instead of allowing things to happen organically.
Hmm.
And you say it to people and they're like, yes, that's right. That's what I want. But baby, I call it that Love Jones. When the Love Jones hits, and it's not necessarily because he turned you out in bed, it can be even more potent because you're looking at people around you getting married, and you're looking at your own biological clock, and you realize, oh my God, if I don't have a baby by this certain time, if I don't do it by this certain time,
Hmm.
it's going to be more difficult. And it's really true for some people. That is a real thing.
It's a real thing for me, for sure.
It's a real thing, but
Sure.
you can't let that cause you to say yes to something that, after you've gotten the child, now you've brought that child into a situation that child is now going to have to suffer because mom and dad were destined for destruction from the beginning.
Right.
So now you've created another life that is going to go through trauma because you put your biological clock over making sure that you could provide them with the family they would need to become who they need to be.
Right.
So you have to, and that again, that's where therapy and coaching come in, because when you're locked and loaded on one cylinder, you need somebody who can help you deconstruct it in a way that helps you to see it for yourself.
Right.
Because people are always giving you advice around you.
It's true.
And the reason we don't take it is because it's their advice.
Yep.
And what therapy and coaching does is help you to find it within yourself. What is your truth?
Yes.
What is your truth? And how can we get in alignment with that?
You know, you brought up the point about the biological clock, and you put in the biological clock over the welfare of the child. And I love that you said that, because I've never looked at it that way. And by you saying that, I realized how selfish that is. That's really selfish. Like, I'm putting my biological clock over the life that I want my child or a potential child to have. Because this child is not an accessory. This child is a human being. So you should want them to have a life even better than yours, right? You want to provide, you want to give to them. So that just made me look at it in a totally different way, because that is really selfish. And this whole time, I'm being selfish because I'm that woman. I'm that woman that's like, I have a biological clock. Let's go. Hey, are you it? No, okay. No. You? No, okay. Moving on, like, let's go. And I'm running this race, but I'm not thinking about the entire picture. I have this laser focus on, okay, let's get this baby because I'm 32 and time is running out, but not thinking like, whoa, what's the life that I want to provide for the baby? So if I could provide a better life, if I have a baby at 36, than having a baby now, then which one am I going to choose?
Yeah, and I love that you called that. That was one of those magic moments,
It
because
was.
I had never said it in that way before. So I'm just grateful for the magic that came from that, because I started thinking about it as you were even talking about that child is going to have to live with the consequences for the rest of their lives. It's not like, oh, oops, I made a mistake. I don't want this to be your father anymore. It's like, oops, sorry, let's start over again. I want do over. No, that child is going to be stuck with that DNA and the consequences that go with it.
Wow. That was definitely a light bulb moment for me. So I thank you for that. Because I'm going to be looking at this biological clock in a totally different way. And it goes back to what we said earlier. You don't know what you don't know. And for me, I didn't realize that that was a selfish thing. And sometimes selfish is not a bad thing. So I don't want to put that out there as if like you shouldn't put yourself first and you shouldn't think about yourself, because you absolutely should. But when you're involving another person, an innocent person that you have to provide this life for, that's when it becomes very different. So thank you for that light bulb.
Well, you're welcome.
This is what coaching and therapy is all about, people.
That's it.
This is what it's about. I love it. But I do want to get into you. Like, what exactly does I am enough mean to you?
Oh my, I am enough means that it's kind of twofold. One, I am enough to fulfill everything I was put here in this world to fulfill. whether I think I am or whether I've lived my way to the understanding that I am, is immaterial.
Yeah.
It's just like a child that already has in their wiring to start, cooing at a certain age or flipping at a certain age or crawling or walking. It's nothing that you can stop. It's already hardwired into you that you are enough to fulfill the reason you were put here.
Yes.
And the second part of it is that's why, and I believe the value of who we are was so important that out of all the sperm that flooded your mother's body before you, and even the day or night or whenever you were conceived, it took one. All of them couldn't do it.
Right.
Only one could fertilize the egg that became you.
Right.
And not only that, but when we look at all that's happened in our world and all that happened, even with COVID, we know how in 9 months, so many different things happen. You live a lifetime in 9 months.
Yes, for sure.
And that divine understanding of your value kept you safe.
Yep.
Regardless to whether your mama drank, smoked, regardless to regardless to how you were conceived.
Yeah.
That higher consciousness kept you safe for 9 months, or kept you safe that even if you got here prematurely or barely made it,
Yeah.
there was something greater than your mom, your dad, the circumstances
Yeah.
that said you were valuable enough to be necessary.
Yes. You preaching today.
I mean, that you were necessary. And that's why it's so important when you ask yourself the question, or when life brings you to your knees and you're wondering in what shape or form, am I enough? Am I smart enough? Am I able? Am I adequate?
Yeah.
That you don't defer to people who didn't make you. Because nobody that we ask their opinion of did what that divine will did that made sure that we made it here.
Yes.
And so you have to connect with that, whatever way that is for you. I'm a Christian, so my access point is Jesus. But there's so many different roads to higher consciousness and higher understanding. So whichever way works for you. All I know is this: it goes inward. It has to happen within you, because the answer is always within you. The only thing that therapy and coaching does is help you to dig and give you tools to dig with. But the answer is always in you, because it's in your DNA. It was part of what was put in you that made you relevant for your moment. You're part of the ecosystem. Without you being here and playing your part as you, everything suffers, whether you know it or not. And so that's what has become my definition of what makes me enough, because for so long, I tried to live up to other people's definitions. And if I lived up to it in the way that they thought was right, then I was enough.
Right.
But if they could poke holes into it, or I made an F instead of an A++, then I would say that I'm not. I would question it.
Right.
I would defer to their opinion. And to be honest, people have the right to their opinion. But when it comes to your enoughness, their opinion does not change the fact that you're still here. And you survive what you survive because there's a higher consciousness and a higher will that is committed to your survival. And that's because you're enough.
Yes. And people can only provide to you with their experiences. So they can only give you that advice and look at you through their lens. So I love the fact that you said, like, it's about you and your enoughness. It's about going internally and not externally. And whether you get that A or that F, guess what? You're still here.
You're still here.
So that F may have been needed for you to do something greater, for you to motivate you or whatever it is. So I love that you said that, because it's not I am enough if this
Mm.
happens, right? It's not I
Mm-hmm.
am enough if I am successful in my business. I am enough if my relationship is successful, if I'm married, if I have children. No, you are enough right now where you are, period.
Period. Straight, no chaser.
That's right. That's
Enough.
yes. This was such a great conversation, Suzette, but I do want you to leave us with some final thoughts. Please let everyone know how they can follow you, how they can get in contact with you, and just leave us with anything you feel that we should know.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Keisha,
Oh, you're welcome.
for allowing me to be a part of your first. There's something so special.
Yes. And there will be
And
more with you.
it is so sacred
Yes.
when someone allows you to be a part of something they're birthing.
Mm.
I count it an honor and a privilege that you asked. And I
Oh,
appreciate that so
you're
much.
welcome.
So, final thoughts. If there was one takeaway that I would offer, it would be that to the listeners is that you are more than what you do
Hmm.
and how well you do it. You aren't a human performer or a human achiever.
Right.
You are a human being.
Mm. Mm.
You are the brilliance behind what you do.
Yes.
And until you can appreciate that part of you, you'll chase fulfillment, but cheat yourself of really having it. Because true fulfillment isn't based on what you have or what you do, it's based on your relationship with yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's what I would have to offer.
I love it. And how can we support you, follow you, your Instagram? I don't know if you have Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is. How can we find you?
Well, first and foremost, if you want to hear me talking or doing what Keisha is doing, I do have a weekly podcast
Yes.
titled Enough Factor Podcast,
Ooh.
where I feature both solo. Sometimes I just want to get behind the mic and talk.
Hmm.
And other times I have wonderful guests. And if they want to access that, they can either go to my website,
Hmm.
SuzetteSolutions.com/listen, or they can type Enough Factor Podcast in the search box of their podcast streaming app. And 9 times out of 10, it'll come up.
Awesome.
My favorite playgrounds are Instagram and Facebook.
Virtual playgrounds, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I used to swear by Facebook and that, but now I'm falling in love with Instagram
Yes,
too.
yeah.
But on Facebook, you can find me, and both of them, I think, you can find me at Your Coach Suzette. Your
Awesome.
Coach Suzette, and that's where they can find me.
Yes. And I'll, of course, put all of that in the description box. So, everyone, if you are on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will put all of the information below. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Suzette, for being my first guest. I am so excited for everyone to receive from this podcast, from this episode. I feel like you gave us a lot to think about. You gave us a lot of gems. And I know that someone listening is definitely going to carry something from it. So I'm appreciative of that. If you would like to buy I Am Enough apparel, as you can see, we're rocking here. You
We're
can go on
rocking
my
it.
website, www.weinspiretees.com. That is TEES. Once again, that is in the description box. Follow Coach Suzette. Follow me on Instagram at We Inspire Brand. And I look forward to talking to you all in the next episode. Take care.